I told you yesterday as I was sharing a video that purported, it was claimed that it came from the hacker group Anonymous, and that they had a video of Bill Clinton having sex with a 13-year-old girl on a pedophile island somewhere in the area of Jamaica. In fact, the fellow who owned this resort was a friend of Clinton's. Clinton used to fly on his plane, and I mentioned that this was probably one of those stories you don't hold your breath on, because I said when you see these things, there's nothing to them. And I know a lot of people out there. No, you're not hoping that Bill Clinton rapes 13-year-old girls, but you're looking at 25 days to go until the election day, and there are no big bombshells to upset the Hillary Clinton campaign. And among people who don't like the Clintons, well, that's upsetting. But as it turns out, even the people over at InfoWars, that's Alex Jones' outfit, are backing away from this video, saying that it's likely a hoax. Now, if Alex Jones says, hey, pay no attention to this, then I guess it's likely a hoax. Either that or the Clinton crime family is so powerful that they're now intimidating Alex Jones. You see, Alex Jones, most of what he does is over the internet. He's no longer what you'd call a terrestrial radio guy, and he doesn't have pressures from the FCC. But on the other hand, the Obama administration has already cracked down on the internet. Now they've turned it over to people who don't like us. And unfortunately, that will mean new regulations for people who use the internet for their own programming. They're taking away your liberties, everywhere. But just to let you know, I had said during yesterday's segment when I shared a clip from the purported anonymous leaker, don't get your hopes up about this if you think this is going to sink the Clinton campaign, because these things come up and then it turns out there's nothing there. And that appears to be the case. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And I knew the media wasn't going to go after that story anyway, because it wouldn't benefit their girl. I heard a great comment from Joe Scarborough. He's a Republican, served in Congress, said he was one of those class of 94 House conservatives, but he admitted after he went to work over at MSDNC that he'd moderated his views. In other words, they're giving me a big paycheck. I'm a liberal now. But lately, he's actually started to find a little bit of his courage again, and he said, look, even if these allegations about Donald Trump are true, why are they coming out now? In other words, the media has been sitting on these things for a very, very long time. Why do they wait until the last few weeks? Well, because the media is working to destroy him. And if the media is working to destroy him, Peggy Noonan made a good comment. She's a conservative. She writes for the Wall Street Journal. She said she tends to believe women when they make these claims. So do I. But it's the timing of it that leads you to be suspicious, because they could have done this during the primary season. But you see, they try to pick the candidate so their Democrat can have the best opportunity of knocking, like the Bobo doll, knocking that candidate down come November. And I think that's what the whole point of this was all along. Meanwhile, they've never met anybody quite like Donald Trump. I've never forgiven the media for what it did 4 years ago to Herman Cain, who everybody that knows Herman Cain says is the nicest, sweetest man you could ever meet. But all of a sudden, out of nowhere, as Cain was surging to the lead in the Republican primaries, we heard, oh, Herman Cain has touched the bottoms of women that he's not married to. Oh, Herman Cain's a lecher. You know how those black fellows are. Yeah. Media claims it's not bigoted, huh? Well, Herman Cain ended up dropping out of the race. But what was funny, as soon as he did, his accusers all vanished. And you never heard any follow-up from media. Do you think that perhaps that was all a setup and that media played a part in it? Of course it did. Donald Trump isn't dropping out, though, and that frustrates the media even more. I want you to take a listen to Trump as he was speaking in Florida yesterday. And this is a man, to quote Abraham Lincoln when he was told he should dismiss Ulysses S. Grant, Lincoln said, he fights.
Let's be clear on one thing. The corporate media in our country is no longer involved in journalism. They're a political special interest no different than any lobbyist or other financial entity with a total political agenda, and the agenda is not for you, it's for themselves. And their agenda is to elect crooked Hillary Clinton at any cost, at any price, no matter how many lives they destroy. For them, it's a war. And for them, nothing at all is out of bounds. This is a struggle for the survival of our nation, believe me. And this will be our last chance to save it on November 8th. Remember that.
I think he summed it up quite well. And you'll hear people say Donald Trump is an imperfect candidate. Certainly is. Certainly is. But I've got to tell you, that imperfect candidate, I saw a great piece today at Washington Examiner, a woman by the name of Lena Epstein. She says, I'm Jewish, I'm a woman, I'm a millennial, that means she's young, and I'm incredibly proud to be a Republican supporting Donald Trump for president. For many of us around the country, she says, the media culture has made coming out as a Trump supporter feel as nerve-wrenching as introducing yourself at a support group meeting, as if we have a problem instead of an opportunity. He's the best person for action, she writes. That's the key, action. People seem to forget that. There's plenty of talk about everything except action. Now, I read that today, and I was struck by some of the polling data and the numbers that you're seeing coming out. When she says, you know, you're embarrassed sometimes to say you support Trump. I've had friends telling me, and this is anecdotal evidence, it may mean nothing, but they'll go places and people will whisper to them that they're supporting Trump. So in other words, they wouldn't tell a pollster they were, but you know, they don't want to be called a racist bigot or be judged. But in reality, when they go into that booth, they'll be pulling the lever for Trump. Also, Real Clear Politics today says the folks who run the Los Angeles Times poll, which has generally shown Trump with the biggest leads nationwide, it's an outlier according to all of the other pollsters. All of the other polling data say that's got to be wrong because it doesn't match what the other polls are saying, and most of them say Hillary Clinton is in the lead, and if you have an average, she's still in the lead, and this is over with. In fact, I'm reading more and more that, you know, Trump's campaign is sinking, it's done, and we've seen the end of him, and Hillary Clinton will be president, and you'll lose more of your liberties, but won't it be great because she'll give you more food stamps? Let him eat cake. I'm telling you, the LA Times poll, according to Real Clear Politics, used to be called the Rand poll. It's the same poll, but it was called the Rand poll back in 2012. And in 2012, when most of the other polls were showing a close race coming down the stretch between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama, the Rand poll gave the race to Obama by nearly 4 points, an almost exact margin of victory. So that's the poll that predicted Obama's margin of victory 4 years ago. Changed the name of it, but it's the same polling methodology. So for all of those people wishing that we had a different candidate right now, and do you really believe Casper Milquetoast Jeb Bush would have appealed to the current, what you call, feeling among the American public? And here's another thing. If Hillary Clinton wins this election, and I got to thinking about that this morning, if Hillary Clinton wins this election, it might just be the best thing for us in the sense that it will hasten the revolution that is coming. If they print it next week, because I'm a little over the top perhaps for what they would like, I have a column scheduled for next Tuesday the 18th in the Magic Valley Times News. I discussed this. We have so many economic indicators that show us times are going to get really bad. And if you're a Democrat in the White House, you're going to take your own party down for a generation. This is the party that has been oppressing cake bakers and wedding photographers. This is the party that has used the IRS to punish its enemies. This is the party that is trying to tell us your little girl has to pee in the bathroom next to some big hairy ape. If they go down to defeat, there could be someone along the lines of Trump who comes in to pick up the pieces, because the mood of the country is surly. That's a mild way to put that. Now, since the Constitution has already been shredded by the Obama administration, he uses it as toilet paper. He rules by fiat, issuing all of his regulations, and the courts just can't keep up with him. Well, if that be the case, and there's no Constitution really left with no limits, and the next person who takes over after Hillary finishes the destruction of the U.S. economy and the working class, then that person is going to come in and, how shall we put it, put a template down on this country that restores a lot of your liberties, in the sense that the people who are Christians in this country, who are hated, as we know, by WikiLeaks, by the Clinton team, says you can refuse service out of conscience and faith, and says we're not going to have the IRS intimidating people. We'll simply get rid of it. We'll get rid of Department of Education. We'll get rid of Department of Energy. We'll get rid of the BLM. States will be sovereign again as they were intended to be. If that person comes in, it's going to be a black day for American liberals. And I think her election will then hasten that, and it will be generations again before liberalism ever rears its ugly head in this country. And I had another thought while driving into work today, and I want you all to think about this carefully for a moment. If tomorrow, every last liberal was raptured by their master straight into hell, would this world be a better place immediately? It's 8:18. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Quick note, coming up in the next hour of the program, we're going to be talking about guns as we do on Friday morning, just after the 9 o'clock news from Fox. That's on the way, and if you have comments or questions we're going to obviously have Forrest Anderson in here, and Forrest is a man who actually deals in firearms, and we're going to have Todd Eccles, who trains people in firearm safety. They'll be joining us in the next hour of the program. Comment or question for them, just keep that in mind. And I quickly wanted to note, coming up this weekend, if you have some time, you might want to drop by the Twin Falls County Fairgrounds. Anything Potato. This big festival is now in its fourth year, taking place tomorrow evening between 5:30 and 8 o'clock. You can sample all the potato dishes and vote for your favorite potato soups, salads, desserts, and more. It's a fundraiser for the Twin Falls County Fair Foundation, and that will help make fairgrounds improvements. The one thing I can say about going to the Twin Falls County Fair, it rivals some state fairs in what it has available for the public. I mean, it is truly a gem in this area, and anything you can do to help it out, go ahead and do that, because it is a huge economic engine for us, and it also helps us keep in touch with our culture, the way things used to be before the liberals took over and started their efforts to destroy the world. 20 minutes after 8 o'clock. I'll take your phone calls in just a couple of minutes. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. It's 63, but it's going to be a little wet at times today. I want to share something with you just quickly, if I could. We told you yesterday about Idaho County Republicans backing away from their support of Mike Crapo because Crapo will not back Donald Trump. And I'm told this morning that as many as 8 of Idaho's 44 county Republican committees could be joining them. I mean, look, I'm not a Republican committee person. I am a Republican. I'm a conservative, actually, in the Republican Party. But if I was in party leadership, look, Trump was our nominee for president. Mike Crapo is our nominee as a Republican, if you're a Republican in the state of Idaho, for U.S. Senate. And the alternative isn't pretty if you're a Republican. And so I don't know where these county committees, you can disagree with Mike Crapo, but I think that Republicans now turning and abandoning him, 2 wrongs aren't going to make a right. It's 8:24. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. It's 62. We have a caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air.
Bill, when Trump says crooked Hillary, he should also say the dangerous Clintons who exposed missile technology to Red China and left our country unprotected because he lost the codes to the nuclear football. If Trump uses the label the dangerous Clintons, Joe, Mika, and the other people at MSNBC will have to change their underwear.
I wonder if they'll do it live while they're on the air. 825, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com. The only time that's ever gotten close in my life, I was horseback riding at the Guadalupe River Ranch in Texas. And they didn't tell me when I saddled up that morning and got on my horse that it was a former racehorse. So I was riding with some friends, and we came up on this gully, and of course the Guadalupe River runs through it at the bottom. And one of my buddies rode up next to me, and what happens to a racehorse when he sees a horse next to him? You get it. He took off down the side of that gully. We went through the river and back up the other side in a split second, it seemed. The closest that ever came to happening to me. I need someone to look after my health in a moment like that. Actually, I wanted to mention Dr. Eric F. Jones, who actually is doing his best to look after your health, but he uses a traditional form. It's called Holistic Systemic Approach to Wellness. He's been doing this for almost 25 years with master's and doctoral degrees in marriage and family therapy, which in this day and age, it's definitely a needed service. Dr. Jones uses methods of alternative healing such as naturopathy, medicinal herbs, nutrition, sound waves, intellectual cognitive self-regulation, and napathy to help remedy and manage mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual challenges. And he's currently accepting new patients. He has evening and Saturday appointments available, 731-7178, or find him on Facebook. Eric F. Jones, Ph.D., mental health and wellness therapist, and that's Eric with a C. You're next, and you're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story. Go ahead.
Yes, we're dealing with two different kinds of candidates. One, Hillary is amoral. That means she has no morals. She has none. And then we have Trump, who's immoral, who has broken the commandments, but I think he still has a conscience. So I think that's what we're really dealing with. Somebody like Hillary who has no remorse of anything she's done. And whereas Trump, he acted not like a politician because he wasn't a politician, but he's not a moral person. But, boy, I tell you what, compared to Hillary, he looks pretty good.
I'll tell you something I think about Trump, too, because he seems to have a lot of respect for Christians.
Yes.
And his daughter is Jewish. She's converted, and he's got a lot of close friends who come out of that, that Hebraic tradition. I think that the fact of the matter is that he has been willing to listen and talk to these people and take advice. He's a seeker. Even at 70 years old, you can be a seeker. And I think that at some point in his life, he is going to ask one of these people, whether it be Pastor Jeffress or Franklin Graham, to help him find salvation. I really believe that. I think that he's being led in that direction in his life.
Well, exactly. And I think we have to recognize that none of us, we're all far from perfect, but everybody has to have a beginning point to recognize that they have sinned and they need to change. I don't think it's even in her thinking. It's not in her thinking. She doesn't recognize she's even doing. She's so beyond. I don't know. We're in big trouble because she has these rants where she just explodes on people. I was reading about the one with Matt Lauer.
Yeah.
And why would anyone even think about having her in charge of anything? Because she can't even handle the littlest question off the track that puts her on the hot seat. So.
Well,
anyway.
I thank you. Thank you much for the call. I was watching Evan McMullen on TV yesterday. He was on the Okavudu's program. Maybe I'll share a clip from that a little later. He's the independent candidate that was drafted by a lot of the neoconservatives, William Kristol and that gang to run. And he may well win Utah, which means he takes those few electoral votes. He's going to tip the election no matter what to Hillary Clinton. But he was bragging on the program, saying he may take Idaho as well. I have my ears pretty close to the ground. I hope that's not the case. Nothing against him personally. He seems to be a great guy, but it's not his time. And to play spoiler and deliver this election to her, I've had enough of that stuff in my life. I think it's time for people to step aside and say, I've got a lot of opportunities to do this again 4 or 8 years down the road. 8:30, Bill Colley with you. More of your phone calls on this subject coming up in a couple of minutes. It's 61 on KLIX.